I swore I'd never tell him how I felt. Then he read my journal. My name's Ellie, and for 3 years, I've carried a secret that's burned a hole through my heart. It's not the kind of thing you admit out loud, not to your friends, not to your family, not even to yourself in the mirror. Because the person I love, the one I can't stop thinking about, is my stepbrother Caleb. He's not blood, but he's family, and that's enough to make this wrong. Isn't it? I used to lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, asking myself that question over and over, like if I repeated it enough, I'd find an answer that didn't tear me apart. But the truth is, there's no answer that makes this okay. There's no answer that makes it go away. It started so small, so innocent, just a flicker of something I couldn't name. A glance that lingered too long across the dinner table, a laugh that made my chest ache like I'd been running for miles. We were thrown together when our parents married, two strangers forced to share a house, a life, a world that felt too small for both of us. I was 17, still figuring out who I was, and Caleb was 19, this quiet, confident guy who seemed to know exactly who he was. From the moment he walked into my life with his messy dark hair and those hazel eyes that seemed to see right through me, I was in trouble. I told myself it was nothing, just a stupid teenage crush I'd get over in a week, maybe 2. But the more I tried to bury it, the deeper it grew, like a weed wrapping around my ribs, tightening every time he said my name. I hid it perfectly. Or so I thought. I poured every forbidden thought into my journal, locked it away in my nightstand, and played the part of the perfect stepsister. We joke about dumb things, like who ate the last slice of pizza, or fight over whose turn it was to do the dishes. We'd act like nothing was wrong, like we were just another pair of siblings bickering in a normal family. But every night, when the house was quiet, I'd pull out my journal and write about the way his hand brushed mine when he passed me a plate at dinner, or how his voice softened when he asked if I was okay after a bad day. Those pages were my sanctuary, the only place I could admit the truth, that I noticed every detail about him, that I memorized the way his smile tilted just a little to the left, that I hated myself for wanting him to look at me the way I looked at him. I thought those pages were safe. I thought I was safe. Until the night Caleb found my journal. The night everything I'd fought so hard to keep hidden came spilling out into the open, raw and ugly and undeniable. And let me tell you, when the person you love most, the one you shouldn't love at all, knows your deepest secret, nothing in your world stays the same. How do you face someone who's seen your heart laid bare? How do you live in a house where every glance feels like a confession, every word a tightrope you're afraid to fall from? Stick with me, because this story isn't what you think. It's messier, heavier, and so much more human than you can imagine. It's a story about love that doesn't fit into neat little boxes, about secrets that burn, and about the kind of longing that doesn't let go, no matter how hard you try. October 12, 2020. That's when I wrote the first entry about him. I still remember the way my hand shook as I pressed the pen to the paper, like I was committing a crime just by putting the words down. I wasn't supposed to feel this way about Caleb. He was my stepbrother, for God's sake. Our parents had been married for 6 months by then, and we were still figuring out how to be a family. Mom and Richard, his dad, were so in love it was almost embarrassing, always holding hands, always planning these cheesy family game nights like we were living in some perfect sitcom. They'd laugh and say we were the Brady Bunch, but me and Caleb? We were like two puzzle pieces from different boxes, forced to fit together in a picture that didn't make sense. I was 17, a senior in high school, the quiet one who'd rather bury my nose in a book than go to a party. I wasn't unpopular, but I wasn't the girl everyone noticed either. I liked my little world of novels and playlists, where I could control the chaos. Caleb was the opposite. He was 19, a freshman in college, only home on weekends, but when he was there, he carried this quiet confidence that made everyone pay attention. He wasn't loud or obnoxious, not like some of the guys at school who thought they were God's gift. Caleb was different. He had this way of filling a room without trying, with his dark hair that always fell into his eyes, and that half smile that could make you forget what you were saying mid-sentence. Everyone loved him, Our parents, his friends, the girls at my school who'd corner me in the hallway to ask, "Is Caleb single?" I'd smile, say, "I don't know, asked him," and walk away, feeling like I'd swallowed glass. Because every time they asked, it reminded me of what I was trying so hard to ignore. Living with him was torture. Not because we fought, we didn't, not really. It was the little things that got under my skin, the moments that felt too big for what they were. The way he'd lean against the kitchen counter in the morning, his t-shirt stretched across his shoulders, teasing me about my terrible attempts at making pancakes. The way he'd sit just a little too close on the couch during our forced family movie nights, his arm brushing mine just enough to make my skin burn. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was reading too much into the way he'd look at me sometimes, his eyes lingering a second longer than they should. Was I crazy? Was I making it all up in my head? I'd lie awake at night, replaying every interaction, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I started writing in my journal to make sense of it all. It was the only place I could be honest, the only place I could admit that I noticed every detail about him. The way his laugh sounded different when it was just the two of us, deeper and softer, like a secret we shared. The way he'd linger in my doorway after dinner, asking about my day like he actually cared, not just making small talk. I wrote about the guilt, too, the way it clawed at me every time I caught myself staring at him. Because I knew it was wrong. Society doesn't exactly hand out gold stars for falling for your stepbrother, even if he's not blood, even if he's the only person who makes you feel like you're not invisible. I'd write until my hand cramped, pouring out every thought, every moment, every time I hated myself for feeling this way. Those pages were my lifeline, my confessional, my cage. Our parents didn't help. They were so caught up in their own happiness, so focused on blending our family into this perfect unit, that they didn't see the tension simmering under the surface. Mom would beam and say things like, "Ellie, isn't Caleb just the best big brother?" And I'd nod, my stomach twisting into knots. Richard would clap Caleb on the shoulder and say, "Look out for your little sister, okay?" And Caleb would grin, that easy, charming grin, and say, "Always." That word, always, it stuck with me, burrowing into my chest like a splinter. It felt like a promise, even if I didn't know what it meant. I'd catch myself replaying it in my head, wondering if he meant it the way I wanted him to, or if I was just desperate for something that wasn't there. By the spring of 2021, I was drowning. I couldn't look at Caleb without feeling like I was betraying everyone, our parents, myself, him. Every smile, every casual touch, every moment we were alone felt like a test I was failing. I tried to pull away, to build a wall between us. I'd be cold when he tried to talk to me, short with my answers, hoping he'd get the hint and leave me alone. But Caleb noticed. He'd tilt his head, his eyes narrowing, and say, "You okay, Ellie? You're acting weird." I'd lie, mumble something about school stress or college applications, anything to keep him from digging deeper. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could keep my secret locked away forever, buried in those pages where no one would find it. I thought I could outrun my own heart. But secrets have a way of clawing their way out, don't they? They don't stay buried, no matter how deep you dig. June 3, 2021. That's the night everything changed. It was a Saturday, one of those warm summer evenings where the air feels thick with possibility, like the world is holding its breath. Our parents were out at some fancy charity dinner, leaving me and Caleb alone in the house. I was in my room, sitting cross-legged on my bed, writing in my journal like I did every night. I was pouring out every tangled thought I had about him, every moment I'd replayed in my head, like how he'd stared at me that morning over breakfast, his eyes catching mine for just a second too long. I'd gotten careless, leaving the journal open on my desk instead of locking it away in my nightstand. I didn't think anyone would come looking. I was wrong. Caleb knocked on my door, his usual quick tap-tap that I'd come to recognize like my own heartbeat. "Ellie, you hungry? I'm ordering pizza." His voice was light, casual, like nothing in the world was wrong. I mumbled something about not being hungry, my heart racing because I was mid-sentence, scribbling about that very morning, about the way his gaze had made my skin feel too tight. I thought he'd leave, that he'd go back downstairs and order his pizza and let me hide in my room with my secrets. But he didn't. He pushed the door open, leaning against the frame, his arms crossed. "What's with you lately?" he said, his tone shifting, not quite teasing anymore. "You're avoiding me." I froze. My journal was right there on the desk, open, my handwriting glaring like a neon sign screaming my guilt. I tried to close it, but my hands were shaking, fumbling with the pages, and Caleb's eyes flicked to it. "What's that?" he asked, his voice curious, not accusing, but it didn't matter. My throat closed up, and I snapped the journal shut, too fast, too obvious. He raised an eyebrow, that half-smile tugging at his lips. "Secret diary, huh? Writing about your hot new boyfriend." He was teasing, like he always did, but I felt like I was going to throw up. My face burned, and I shoved the journal into a drawer, slamming it shut. "It's nothing," I said, my voice sharp, defensive. "Just homework." But Caleb didn't let it go. He stepped closer, his expression shifting from playful to something heavier, something I couldn't read. "Come on, Ellie," he said. "You've been weird for months. What's going on? You can tell me." I wanted to scream, to tell him to get out, to leave me alone with my stupid, dangerous feelings. But I just stood there, mute, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. I couldn't look at him, couldn't meet those hazel eyes that always saw too much. He didn't push, not then. He just gave me that half-smile, softer this time, and said, "Fine, keep your secrets. But I'm here, okay? Whenever you're ready." And then he left, closing the door behind him, and I thought I'd dodged a bullet. I thought I'd gotten away with it. I was so wrong. The next night, I came home from a friend's house, my head fuzzy from too many hours laughing about nothing, trying to distract myself from the constant ache of wanting Caleb. I walked into my room, tossed my bag on the floor, and froze. My journal was on my bed. Open. My stomach dropped, a cold, sick feeling spreading through me like poison. I flipped through it, my eyes scanning the pages I'd filled with confessions about Caleb, every moment I'd overanalyzed, every time I dreamed about him saying he felt the same, every night I'd cried myself to sleep because I knew it could never happen. Someone had read it. And there was only one person who could have. I stormed downstairs, the journal clutched in my shaking hands, and found Caleb in the living room, sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone like nothing was wrong. I held up the journal, my voice trembling with rage and fear. "Did you read this?" He looked up, and for a split second, I saw something in his eyes, guilt, maybe, or fear, or something else I couldn't name. But then he shrugged, too casual, like he was trying to play it off. "You left it out," he said. "I was curious. You had no right." I was yelling now, tears burning my eyes, my voice cracking under the weight of it all. "This is private, Caleb. You don't get to just—" I stopped, because saying more would mean admitting what he'd read, admitting the truth I'd spent years hiding. He stood up, his face serious for once, no trace of that easy grin. "Ellie, I didn't mean to," he said. "I saw my name and I couldn't stop. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole." He knew. He knew I loved him, not like a brother, not like family, but in a way that made my chest ache every time he was near. I waited for him to laugh, to call me crazy, to tell me I was disgusting for feeling this way. But he didn't. He just stood there, looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time, his eyes searching mine for something I was too scared to give. "Ellie," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Why didn't you tell me?" I laughed, but it was bitter, broken, more like a sob. "Tell you what? That I'm a freak? That I'm in love with my stepbrother? You think that's something I can just say out loud, like it's normal?" My voice was shaking, but I couldn't stop, the words spilling out like they'd been waiting years to escape. "You think I wanted this? To feel like this every single day, knowing it's wrong, knowing it could ruin everything?" He took a step closer, and I backed away, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. "You're not a freak," he said, his voice steady, certain. "You're just you. And I." He stopped, like he was afraid of his own words, like he was standing at the edge of a cliff and wasn't sure he could jump. That's when I felt it, the shift in the air, the unspoken thing that had been hovering between us for years. Was it possible? Did he feel something too? I couldn't let myself believe it, couldn't let myself hope, because hope was dangerous. Hope could destroy me. For weeks after that, we danced around it. We didn't talk about the journal, but it was there, a ghost in every conversation, haunting every moment we were together. He'd catch my eye across the dinner table, and I'd look away, my face burning. He'd brush past me in the hallway, his arm grazing mine, and I'd hold my breath, trying to pretend it didn't make my skin tingle. I started noticing things I hadn't before, or maybe I had, but I'd been too scared to admit it. The way he'd linger when we were alone, asking me random questions about my day just to keep me talking. The way his voice softened when he said my name, like it was something precious. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was projecting my own feelings onto him, seeing what I wanted to see. But then there were moments that made me question everything, moments that kept me awake at night, replaying them until I thought I'd go insane. Like the night he drove me home from a party. I'd had a couple of drinks, not enough to be drunk, but enough to loosen my tongue, to make me reckless. We were stopped at a red light, the hum of the car the only sound between us, and I couldn't stop myself. "You must think I'm pathetic, huh?" I said, staring out the window, my voice barely above a whisper. "Writing all that stuff about you in my journal." He didn't laugh, didn't make a joke like I expected. He just gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles white, and said, "You're not pathetic, Ellie. You're the furthest thing from it." His voice was so quiet, so heavy with something I couldn't name, that I almost believed he meant more than he was saying. I turned to look at him, but he kept his eyes on the road, his jaw tight, like he was fighting a war inside himself. I wanted to ask what he meant, to demand he explain, but I was too scared of the answer. The tension kept building, day after day, week after week, until it felt like we were living in a pressure cooker, the air thick with things we couldn't say. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't think about anything but him. Every moment we were together was a minefield, every word a potential explosion. And the worst part? I didn't know if he was just being kind, trying to spare my feelings, or if he felt it too. The not knowing was killing me, eating away at me until I felt like I was unraveling. But I was too scared to ask, too scared to face the truth. Because what if he didn't feel it? What if he did? August 2021. 2 months after the journal incident, and our house felt like a battlefield where no one was fighting out loud. Every conversation was laced with things we didn't say, every glance a question neither of us could answer. I tried so hard to act normal, to be the stepsister I was supposed to be, but it was like trying to hold water in my hands. It kept slipping through, no matter how tightly I held on. Caleb wasn't making it any easier. He'd started doing these little things that drove me up the wall, things that felt deliberate, like he was testing me. He'd leave his hoodie on my chair, knowing I'd wear it when he wasn't around, knowing I'd breathe in the faint scent of his cologne like it was oxygen. He'd asked me to help him with random things, fixing his laptop, picking out a movie, like he just wanted an excuse to be close. I hated how much I loved it, how much I craved those moments even as they tore me apart. Our parents were completely oblivious. Mom would gush about how well we got along, how we were such good siblings. And every time she said it, I wanted to scream until my throat was raw. Caleb would just smile, that easy, charming smile, and change the subject, but I'd catch the way his eyes flicked to me, like he was checking my reaction, like he knew exactly how much those words hurt. It was maddening, this game we were playing without rules, without a finish line, without any idea of what came next. I started to wonder if he was doing it on purpose, if he was trying to push me to breaking point, to see how much I could take before I cracked. Then came the night that broke me open. It was late, maybe 2 a.m., and I couldn't sleep, my mind racing with thoughts of him, with the weight of everything I was carrying. I went downstairs for a glass of water, hoping the quiet of the house would calm me down. But there was Caleb, leaning against the kitchen counter, staring at nothing, a glass of water in his hand like he'd been standing there for hours. He looked tired, not just physically, but like he was carrying something heavy, something that was wearing him down. "Can't sleep either?" he asked, his voice soft, and I shook my head, not trusting myself to speak. We stood there, the silence stretching between us, thick and heavy, until he finally said, "Ellie, we need to talk about it." My heart stopped, my breath catching in my throat. "Talk about what?" I said, playing dumb, but my voice betrayed me, high and shaky. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, that familiar scent that made my head spin. "You know what?" he said. "The journal. Everything." I wanted to run, to bolt back to my room and lock the door, but my feet wouldn't move. "There's nothing to say," I whispered, staring at the floor, willing myself not to cry. It's just me being stupid." He shook his head, his eyes locked on mine, and I felt like he could see every secret I'd ever kept. "It's not just you," he said, and those 4 words hit me like a freight train, knocking the air out of my lungs. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, waiting for him to laugh and say he was kidding, but it didn't come. Instead, he took another step closer and said, "I've been trying to ignore it, Ellie. For years. But I can't anymore." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice barely audible, like if I spoke too loud, the moment would shatter. "I'm saying I feel it too," he said, his voice raw, like he was tearing the words out of himself. "I don't know what it means, or what we're supposed to do, but I can't keep pretending I don't." The world tilted, everything I thought I knew shifting under my feet. All this time, I thought I was alone in this, that I was the only one drowning in feelings I couldn't control. But now he was standing there, saying he felt it too, and it was too much, too big, too impossible. I backed away, shaking my head, tears stinging my eyes. "No, Caleb," I said. "We can't. This is wrong. Our parents, I know." He interrupted, his voice sharp, desperate. "I know it's wrong. I know what people would say, what they think. But it doesn't feel wrong, does it? When it's just us, when it's you and me, it feels like the only thing that's ever made sense." He was right, and I hated him for it. It didn't feel wrong. It felt like the only thing in my life that was real, that was mine. But that didn't change the truth, that we were step-siblings, that our parents were married, that the world would judge us, tear us apart, call us every name in the book. I turned and ran back to my room, locking the door, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I leaned against the door, sliding to the floor, tears streaming down my face as I tried to make sense of what he'd said, what it meant for us, for me. After that night, things got worse. Caleb didn't push, didn't bring it up again, but he didn't back off either. He'd find ways to be near me, to remind me of that moment in the kitchen. A touch on my arm when he passed me in the hallway, a look that lasted too long across the breakfast table. Every gesture felt like a question, every silence a challenge. I was unraveling, torn between wanting him and hating myself for it. I started avoiding him, staying out late with friends, locking myself in my room with my music turned up loud, anything to keep him at a distance. But you can't run from someone who lives in your house, who's part of your life, who's carved into your heart like a scar. Then came the family vacation, the one our parents insisted on, saying we needed a bonding trip, to bring us closer together. A cabin in the mountains, 4 days under one roof, no escape. I dreaded it, knowing there'd be no hiding from Caleb, no pretending the air between us wasn't electric. The first night, our parents went to bed early, exhausted from the drive, leaving me and Caleb alone by the fire pit outside. The stars were out, the air cool, the crackle of the fire the only sound for a long time. He didn't say anything at first, just handed me a marshmallow to roast, his fingers brushing mine, sending a jolt through me. He sat closer than he needed to, his knee almost touching mine, and the silence was unbearable, charged with everything we weren't saying. Ellie, he finally said, his voice low. We can't keep doing this. Pretending nothing's there. I stared into the fire, my throat tight, the marshmallow burning black on the stick in my hand. What do you want me to say, Caleb? I said, my voice shaking. That I love you? That I've loved you for years? What good does that do? We can't be together. Not like this. Not ever. He was quiet for a long time, the fire casting shadows across his face, making him look older, tired. Maybe we could, he said finally. If we were careful. If we left. I laughed, but it came out like a sob, raw and broken. Left? And go where? What, we just run away and pretend the world won't hate us. Our parents, our friends, everyone, they'd never understand. I don't care about the world, he said, his voice fierce, his eyes burning into mine. I care about you. I've always cared about you. Those words broke something in me, cracked open a part of my heart I tried so hard to keep locked. I wanted to believe him, to let myself fall into this impossible thing we both felt, to imagine a world where we could be together without shame, without judgment. But I couldn't. The weight of it, our family, our lives, the way people would look at us, it was too much. I stood up, tears streaming down my face, and said, I can't do this, Caleb. I can't. I walked away, leaving him by the fire, the cold air stinging my skin as I stumbled back to the cabin, my heart in pieces. I thought that was the end of it. I thought I could bury it again, lock it away like I had before, force myself to move on. I thought I could be stronger than my feelings, stronger than him. But I was wrong. September 2021. A month after the vacation, and I was still trying to convince myself I could forget Caleb, that I could erase him from my heart like he was just a phase, just a mistake. But love doesn't work like that. It doesn't just stop because you tell it to, doesn't vanish because you wish it would. I came home from school one day, my backpack heavy on my shoulders, my mind heavier, and found a letter on my bed. Caleb's handwriting, neat and familiar, stared up at me. My hand shook as I opened it, my heart pounding like it knew what was coming. Ellie. It read, I'm leaving. Not because I want to, but because I can't stay here and pretend I don't love you. I know you think this is impossible, and maybe it is. Maybe you're right, and we're fighting a losing battle. But I can't keep living in this house, seeing you every day, knowing we're both hurting, knowing I can't touch you, can't tell you how I feel without breaking everything. I'm going to stay with my mom for a while, figure things out, try to find a way to live with this. But I need you to know this, I don't regret it. Not a single moment of feeling this way about you. You're not a freak, Ellie. You're not wrong. You're the best thing in my life, and you always will be. If you ever change your mind, if you ever think there's a chance for us, I'll be waiting. I'll always be waiting. He was gone by the time I finished reading, his room empty, his car missing from the driveway. I sat on my bed, the letter crumpled in my hands, and I cried harder than I ever had, the kind of crying that feels like it's tearing you apart from the inside. He'd chosen to leave, to protect us both from the mess we'd made, but it felt like he'd taken a piece of me with him, a piece I'd never get back. Our parents were confused, hurt, asking questions I couldn't answer. They thought we'd had a fight, that Caleb was just being impulsive, that he'd come back in a week or two. I didn't tell them the truth. I couldn't. How do you explain something that feels so right and so wrong at the same time? I still see Caleb sometimes, at family gatherings, holidays where we're forced to sit across from each other and pretend everything's fine. Every time, it's like the air gets sucked out of the room, like the world narrows to just the two of us. We don't talk about it, don't mention the letter or the journal or that night by the fire, but it's there, in the way he looks at me, in the way my heart still skips when he says my name. It's there in the silence, in the space between us that feels both too big and not big enough. I don't know if I'll ever see him again, not really, not the way I want to. I don't know if I'll ever stop loving him, if I'll ever stop wondering what could have been if we'd been braver, if we'd been born into a different life, a different story. But I know this, some secrets are too heavy to carry forever, and some loves are too strong to let go, no matter how much you try. They live in you, like a heartbeat, like a scar, like a truth you can't unlearn. What would you do if you loved someone you shouldn't? Would you keep it hidden, bury it deep, and hope it fades? Or would you risk everything, your family, your reputation, your heart, to feel it, just once, just for a moment? Tell me in the comments, because I read every single one, and I want to know I'm not alone in this. If this story hit you, if it made you feel that ache in your chest, hit that like button, share it with someone who gets it, someone who knows what it's like to love in secret. And subscribe for more stories like this, stories that make you feel every messy, beautiful, painful part of being human.